information sources, and credible media outlets. Do not share unverified information. This is a message from UNESCO.
Radyo-katipunan. 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 Sa Blue Eagle kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay at tenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng buwela. Radyo-katipunan. 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 Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero sugod, todo sa kayod, tunong at tulong. Lipat na Blue Eagle, galing giting nagigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo-katipunan. Radyo-katipunan.
Radyo Katipunan. News, insights, inspiration. Radyo Katipunan. Down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle.
Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, 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 katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle, kami di mapipigil sa pagbabalitang tumpak at tama. Buhay at tenista, sa loob sa labas ng eskwela, ating ibibida lahat ng pwera. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Kawal ni Ignacio, Katipunero sugod, todo sa kayod, tunong at tulong. Lipat na Blue Eagle, galing giting at tigil. Blue and white, one big fight. Radyo, katipunan. Radyo, katipunan. Katipunan.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
If it's entertainment you crave,
Catch us on
New
New
Wave.
Wave
Surfing through the latest on our shores.
every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m.
See you there. Hello everyone, good afternoon. It's Max, and when it comes to what's happening, I'll serve you the facts. And as much as I want to say it, I am not relaxed right now, but this is New Wave. So it's been a very busy week, and we're taking on a very different tone from what we usually do. Right now, I think we're all seeing things very differently, uncovering facts as we go, and we're still trying to live life as we can. So today is about reflecting, decompressing, and as communication experts would say, making meaning of what is unfolding right in front of us. So right now, I don't have much news to share, but be very wary of chain messages that spread on messaging apps such as Viber and WhatsApp, especially regarding the state of vote counting and PPCRV, unless these calls for volunteers and things like that are from verified news sources. As much as possible, check other news sources before believing them. We do not want to add to the mess that may happen that these chain messages are contributing to. So anyway, Today I will be joined by students from Ateneo de Manila University, my schoolmates, all with very different perspectives of the past few months. And they will be sharing their personal experiences from the past few months up until today. So joining me today are students Kimiko de Guzman, Maria Maranan, and John Lazaro. So hello everyone. Please turn on your cameras and unmute your mics. So hello to the three of you. Let's start with decompressing. Oh, wait, we have one more in the chat. Teo Ricaforte, please open your camera and unmute. So, hello everyone. I'm not going to ask you yet how the past few days have been for you in terms of the state of the nation, but what about in terms of school? Let's start with that. Let's start with what we can. So, Kimmy, you go first.
Hi, hello. I'm so happy to be here. Nice to meet everyone.
Glad to have you here.
All right. School has been quite difficult. That is an understatement that I will say, having to juggle things emotionally, mentally, and even physically, based on what's been going on now. And especially that it's finals month.
Finals month, yes.
There's just so much to do, and I'm not really sure how I'm handling it, but I'm doing my best, as well as the people around me.
Yeah, our best is what we can do right now. And I'm actually glad you brought up finals month because that is true. It is not finals week, it is finals month. So the next on my Zoom is John Lazaro.
Hi. It's been hard. You have to juggle everything all at the same time, especially for me when I'm on my senior year. I have my final requirements. So this
For
isn't
you,
just
it
like
is the
a
final
finals
month.
It is the final month. I have to deal with the final things I have to do for my 4 years in Ateneo. So there's that. Of course, there's the whole campaign that I have to, volunteer with. So really is quite heavy. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. So Maria, you're next.
Well, for this week, I'm very grateful that I have professors who are very understanding and considerate, especially because our professors themselves are also very sad and confused and angry. So even if, like for example, if a professor would say that our synchronous sessions are going to push through, they would say something like, you don't have to go, it's not required. Or some professors would say that I'll have the Zoom open today just so we can talk about you and how you're feeling and how everyone's feeling. So I'm very grateful that a lot of professors are very considerate to the students, because again, it's not just happening to us students, it's happening to everyone, including our professors.
Yes, that's right. I think some of my professors said the same thing also. Like they would tell us, regardless of who you voted for, come to Zoom and let's talk, let's process all of these things together, because that's really one of the only things we can do right now. So Teo, last but not least.
It's for some reason, like, because over at my end, like, thesis is kind of, last stretch or almost done. So I expected that like the last couple of weeks be like, I can focus on my ACADS and like, get the last stretch through. No, that's not it. I forgot that next week is kind of the last week of school, I think. I don't know. So it's really, there's so much to take in that I'll be honest, I kind of forgot that I had academics to take care of. Like it's really just, there's a lot of process to fathom, so much. There's so much.
Right, exactly. That's something me and a few people were talking about earlier. Like an election is very impactful regardless of who you voted for. So like whether your candidate was put in power or not, it's still a lot to take in either way. So it's kind of hard to focus on things like school and things going on like everywhere else. Now, okay, we'll work backwards this time. We'll start with Teo. What were a few little things that you've been doing these past few days to keep yourself like kind of grounded and recenter yourself from how social media has been lately?
Man, honestly, it's really just not being on social media. As much as as much as it is important to be informed, I think the vast resource that social media is, for better or for worse, it kind of presents itself as like, yes, there's a lot to take in, but you can take in too much. So for my case, it was like, okay, for this time, I think I'll just, not be on Facebook for the time being. Like, I'll just watch some YouTube videos and stuff. Like, because it's very, it's important to listen to the news and all that. But when all you're getting is that, so at a very fast pace, that's hard to keep up. It kind of makes things worse. And like, it's even harder to contain that information that you're getting. So yeah.
That's right. So Maria, you're next.
I also have very complicated feelings about social media, and but I haven't been actually able to be on social media as much as I had been like last week compared to this week, since Monday, because since May 9, since Monday, there was still very much a lot of work to be done.
Yes, that's right.
On Monday, at least before the results started rolling in, we were still like very busy talking about how a lot of people were so disenfranchised as voters, were not able to vote. Like, we have a friend who's also from Ateneo. He wasn't able to vote until 12 a.m. midnight because
I heard about that.
The entire day, the machine assigned to their precinct was broken. Like, that's ridiculous. So, and then we had to do a lot of discussions, a lot of talking, a lot of planning, a lot of action. I know a lot of Ateneans also attended protests yesterday in Manila, Comelec. So there was still a lot of work to be done. I have looked at social media every once in a while, but it's a bit more frustrating than being hopeful to me, because a lot of people are putting out really bad takes. So
the emotions are very high.
Yeah,
that's right. That actually reminded me. I know of an Ateneo alumnus who made cuento that she was in her precinct before lunchtime, but she only received the ballot after midnight.
Wow.
So the whole process ended at 2 a.m. So imagine, I think in total it was over 12 hours, at least 13 hours. And that is very difficult to take in, but we'll get to that later. So John, next up.
Kind of reminds me, just like off the cuff, there was a precinct in QC where the voters slept in the precinct because they were waiting for their VCM to be prepared. So they had to sleep in the precinct just to wait for their machine. But in any case, like right now, my family has a no news policy. We don't watch the news.
You don't watch the news, okay.
We consciously try to avoid watching the news on
Okay.
just like a total ban. Like international news is banned. Local news is banned. As much as possible, don't look at social media. I think it's kind of like disagreement in my family to not look. But my problem with that is that as much as I don't want to look, I have responsibilities that are very social media heavy. So I have to look. It's my job to look at it. And that sucks. I don't want to be in social media right now. With all the bad things that are flying around, and my family's own like no news policy. Honestly, that came from me. I told my parents, let's not watch the news, and they all just nodded. But I can't follow it myself because I have to be on social media. So there's that. I'm really tired.
I feel you. Every word of that. Like having a job that requires being on social media when you want to just take a step back for even just 30 minutes, but you can't do that. Felt. Really, really felt. So, Kimmy, you're up next.
Hi, hello. So far I've been hearing how like people are taking a break from news, and that's awesome. And I'm like that sounds really healthy. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to do that myself, even if I'd like to. It's like some sort of, like, I think fixation might be like, I'm not sure if it's the right word for this, but it's like it's the only thing I can look at right now, being anxious for like what could be the result. Especially after all these like things that have been happening with voting, broken machines, ballots that are being placed like not by the people themselves, not casted by themselves. And I know it's legal, but it doesn't sound right where you ask someone else to hold on to it and okay, pasok na lang po namin mamaya. And I have friends who waited from like 7 a.m. before they even opened until like 9 p.m. They stayed there because they really did not want anyone to touch their ballots, but then they realized no, I have to go home. Like they're tired, they're hungry, they have to do stuff like work, school. Like it's not the only thing that's going on, right? And just hearing about that, especially if they're people you know personally, it's like I can't not look away from this. Like it feels like I have to help, but also I think another part of that is what else can I actually do practically? All I can do is like text like very validating, reaffirming words like kaya mo yan, or you know, it's okay, you can go home if you're
virtual
tired.
company.
Yes, virtual company, but you know, sometimes you can only do so much, and it's that feeling of like helplessness. Not really giving up, but more of like, okay, I think this is all I can do, but I still want to do more, but I don't know what that could be. So that's my situation. It's very stressful, but very cyclical.
It is actually, but the fact that you're willing to like stay in touch with your friends during moments like that, we're all in this together. So that's great. And okay, something that I'm picking up from all of you now is like, we kind of want to stay updated. We also kind of want to detach. And those are two very valid things that can coexist, because like you really want to stay updated. We can't afford not to be. But then at the same time, like us as people, we can only handle so much. And when we're not looking, there's also the paranoia of what's happening, what am I missing out on? So I don't know how to find the balance between those two things. But I do have a piece of advice from someone in Radio Katipunan that I'll share a little later. So right now, let's get into what happened before May 9. Let's get into the campaign period. Since I know that all of the candidates, they had their own campaign strategies. Everyone had their own activities. Some had rallies, some had like special projects. And I know that it happened differently for everyone. So I guess my question is, how active were you and which activities would you participate in? So we'll start with Maria.
I was actually very active in our campaign. I was one of the sort of core organizers.
Oh wow!
Youth part ng campaign. So
Okay.
in that organization, like that volunteer group, we didn't really have like solid titles or positions. We just had this core group, but generally my job was to welcome new signups, talk to new signups, welcome them into the org, take care of like issues between any issues or any concerns between volunteers. I'm also generally am considered to be a very all-around person. I write statements. Sometimes I do pub mats. I help with educational discussions.
All around.
Yes, very all around. So you can imagine how these past few months have been very tiring for me.
For sure.
Yeah. So yeah, and of course, that's mostly online. But I've also done a lot of contributions to our on the ground efforts. We had campaign efforts going to outside actual places.
Yes, going to the real world.
Outside. Yeah. So it was a very, very busy few months. It's actually pretty hard to juggle academics with all the campaign stuff.
I can imagine. Okay, to bring this a step further, since you mentioned that you were in core groups and organizing, what were the special projects or activities that you saw people enjoyed or were very effective in furthering your campaign?
For us, because we were the we were the youth group in the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
We made it our like niche.
Yes.
It can be called that, to put out the more lighthearted and funny
Oh,
stuff.
that's good.
Like the more meany stuff. Like of course we will talk about real issues then.
Yeah.
But if the old guys didn't want to do it in like the main campaign, we can do it ourselves. And there were a lot of like meme or jokey content that we put out that actually resonated, or like went viral with a little viral with other people. I think it helped our reach a lot.
Yeah, but that's good because like there's no fixed way of how to campaign. I mean, if it works, it works. Your goal is to reach people and to start these conversations. So if it worked, then that's great.
Yeah. We also had a lot of creative volunteers, volunteers who know how to sing or make music or make art. So we encouraged our volunteers to really, contribute whatever you can and using whatever skills you have. So we actually had a very diverse array of content that we put out and activities.
All right, that's nice to hear. So next, Teo, you have anything to share?
Like, what did I do during the campaign period?
Yes.
It's more of wishing I could be there rather than actually getting to be there. As much as I really wanted to be part of the rallies and all that, because just to see, the how much work is put into it and how like the support that these rallies get. Like as much as I want to be a part of it, I couldn't. Because parents won't let me. It really is not, it's not allowed because there is still a pandemic.
Yes.
So really there is that issue. So as much as I really did want to join, like it really wasn't allowed. So I tried to be present in the ways that I could. It's not really the best I could do, but it was what I could have done at the moment. But yeah. Man, really, it's a lot of just like, man, I wish I was there. That looks like so much fun. It's like a fiesta, but everyone coming together for a good cause. Like it's magical. So
give yourself a little more credit. There are a lot of ways to help. So it's okay, my friend. They're there. In this chat, you're one of the people I've met before, and I know you've been active in your own way. So next, John.
There are lots of ways to contribute, especially when it comes to electoral political movements. And the tendency is that when you do volunteer or stick around for some time, you get to do all of the jobs.
Yeah,
you get to do all of the jobs. So really, when you volunteer, you kind of have to do everything. And like Maria, I've done everything as well. I think it's pretty good because it trains you in a number of stuff that you never expected yourself to be doing. I think that's been particularly good, but it's also really tiring. So you need to pack up a lot of like energy to keep going because you really need to keep going, especially when you have to balance it with your other responsibilities, with academics, all that other stuff. Everything from, I suppose, online engagement to offline engagement, everything you can think of, rallies, house-to-house campaigns, coming up with memes, strategizing around who your audience is to begin with, who you're reaching, how you're supposed to reach them, how are you supposed to talk to them. I volunteered for a campaign that had a very specific niche, and I think it was a nice opportunity for me to think around sort of the dimensions of the message and think about how you can get that message across. I think it's really interesting, and I think a lot of people learned so much when it came to volunteering. Whoever it is they volunteered for, I think everyone learned a lot. everyone came
For
out of
sure.
this elections, I think, a lot more skilled in a lot of fields than they were before the campaign. Yeah.
Yes, both of you have said you really broke out of your shells and learned a lot more skills than you entered the campaigns with. And that's something that I'm sure will come out again in the future and something that you can use time and time again. So, Kimmy, you're up. Hello, Kimmy. Okay, there you go.
Hello. Hi. Okay. So very, very similar to what Theo said. It was mostly just me being at home and thinking, that looks like a lot of fun and maybe I wish I was there. But for on my end, it's a lot of logistics. There are a lot of problems we have here, especially with being at home, since we're a pretty small family, so I'd usually have to stay behind and watch over everything, watch over the house, tagatanggap ng Shopee. That's that's the job, and then it makes sense because school is online. I have a lot of things to do, so that's the setup, and I'm not mad or anything. I'm still doing my part, of course, online campaigning. I realized that that's something that I can do, and I also did learn skills for the people that I campaign for. I managed a shop where we sold merchandise and campaign materials. It was really fun and it was really nice being able to see people and being able to have very casual conversations with people who believe in the same things that you do, and helping them get this message across, and helping them get those messages across to other people. I think that's amazing. And maybe I can be the bunso who stays at home and still does a lot just to just to help for a good cause. I've been saying that for a while, but yeah, I'm proud of myself, even if I had to stay at home, and I hope people are too. Kaya hindi naman lahat sa rally. Of course, rallies are a big thing, and I am all for it. But shout out to the people na nasa bahay lang, team bahay. Let's go.
But the online setup kind of made space for a team bahay, because for those who couldn't physically be present, there were now live streams. And I don't think that's something we had for all events before. But because of the past 2 years, all of us have learned how to branch out and kind of see, okay, how can we get people in one place without actually being in one place? So that was something very different that I think we saw this time around that we didn't see in the years before. So for my next question, and I think this is kind of coming from the last one, rallies were brought up and they were very prominent among all the candidates. So what were the atmospheres of the ones you attended like? Like, if you were to describe the atmosphere in one word, what would it be? And in the next election, would you do it again? Why or why not? So I'll start with John for this one.
The atmosphere, I suppose, from my campaign's rallies, there were a lot less people than, say, the larger rallies, the bigger candidates. But the mood for the rallies for my campaign was a lot more, for lack of a better term, it was a lot more militant, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a lot more pronounced, I suppose. The political movement edge was a lot sharper, in the sense that you had these rallies and everyone knew that you were focused on sort of talking about the issues and talking about what it took to win these issues, not just in the elections, but beyond the elections. I think in general, the theme for the rallies for my campaign was the question of how to build power, how to build political power in the long term. I suppose I'm getting into sort of esoteric themes, but I think it's also kind of important to touch on them now that we're done with the elections. But I think that's the theme in general. It's not so much bringing out power for elections, so much as it is the question of patiently building momentum, building it in the long run and the short run, in the middle run. I think there was a sense that, the stakes were big, definitely.
Yes.
Not just because it's a presidential election, but because there are fundamental questions at stake during the elections. But as someone whose responsibility it is, part of my responsibility is to speak at rallies. I had a hand in sort of shaping the messaging, the atmosphere in these rallies. So I always sought to, include people in my speeches, I suppose, make it more interactive, doing the whole call and response. You do a chant, you throw it back to, the attendees, and then they throw it back to you, and then you hype up the whole event, that sort of pattern. But I always wanted to keep it tacked onto the issues that were being talked about, rather than actually the candidate we were trying to hype up. I think, I think the campaign that I worked for was a lot more concerned about the issues that were at stake, rather than the person who was taking on those issues, which was, the candidate and their slates. I think it paid off really well. And I think those issues are still, sort of front and center in people's minds these days. I think we did well. But the mood overall, I think, throughout the entire campaign season was that we are here to chip away at the foundations of power in this country. We are on the verge of something new, but we need to be patient. We need to keep at it. We need to, keep going, keep going.
It's actually very interesting that you brought up that the things that you would discuss or share there were more for the issues as opposed to the candidate. Like, that's actually an answer that I wasn't expecting to hear. But it's wow, like you saying that it goes past the elections also. I'm sure with that presentation and that method, it will stay with the people who did attend and probably even reach way beyond that. So Maria, you're next.
Yeah, for our rallies and our mobilizations, it was much less celebratory and very much more focused on the issues. For a bunch of us in the campaign, our political, our being politically active did not really start with the elections. So I don't see why it should end with the elections or start again in the next election.
That's right.
Yeah. Actually, we, after May 9, we've just been continuing what we've been doing. Maybe now we're not framing it under the campaign and the elections, but the essence is still the same. How do we talk about these issues? How can we discuss these issues with workers, ordinary people? How do we get these issues to a more democratic space? And by that, I mean, how do we have these issues in spaces that more people can contribute in and join in, instead of just being stuck in, I don't know, Congress where everyone's a trap or something. So pretty much like that.
All right. Okay. I'm going to take this opportunity actually to say, like, the two of you are right. Your beliefs don't begin and end with a candidate. They do not begin and end with an election. They're in us. It's just a matter of how we put them into practice regarding of what season of our lives or in the country's lives we are in. We're not going to stop being good people because the election's over. We're going to continue that. So Kimmy, your turn.
Hi, hello. May I have a refresher for the question, by the way?
Oh, okay. So I asked about the atmosphere of rallies. How was it for the ones you attended?
Okay. So like I said, I didn't actually get to attend any rally, but I did keep up with it a lot, and like even my parents, my relatives, my titas of Manila would update me how it's been, and like it's very cool to see that it has been consistently I guess a word I would use would be empowering, being able to get together in solidarity for the same thing that you believe in. It's cool, and it feels like you can do basically anything. Syempre, the good things, right?
Yes.
And you feel safe. That's another thing, since you'd feel safe in people that want the best things for our country. Everyone wants good governance. Everyone wants a hopeful future. Everyone wants that, and
that's right.
all in one place. It's cool. and wearing the same color, doing the same things, laughing at the same jokes, and looking up to the same person. It's amazing, like the wonders of organizing and mobilizing. It's also cool to see and I feel included kahit team bahay nga. Just seeing the live stream, seeing the post, seeing the inside jokes that have been made. So, yeah.
At the end of the day, we all want a bright, happy, peaceful future. So, okay, we have a new participant. Hi, Ian. Please unmute and turn on your camera. But when you're ready for that, I'll be moving on to the next question actually. And everyone can just stay unmuted for this so we can have like a conversation about it. But one thing that would happen, and I guess is still happening right now, are we are all conversing with people who have the same views as us and people who have different views as us. Now, these people could be strangers, these people could be classmates, friends, or even family. So, at all of these different levels, how would you personally handle these conversations? And I guess to be specific, these conversations are the ones with people who don't necessarily have beliefs that align with yours. So I'll work outside going in. We'll start with strangers or people you encounter. If you've had these conversations, please share like how would you go about them? Anyone can start. Anyone who's had this experience.
In my experience, it's been much more effective and helpful to approach it from a respectful,
of course,
a very like respectful and not hostile place.
Yeah.
Of course, there are a lot of times where you would be faced with people with very, very different opinions from yours.
Yes.
In fact, opinions that you would deem as very bad. So, for us and for me, we stick to the like line of thinking that there are reasons why people believe things. There are concrete and material reasons why people would believe in something or someone. And if we want to talk to people outside our own opinions in an honest way, in a way there where we can both be, honest and sincere to each other without any pointless arguing or
yes,
whatever. You have to meet that person halfway.
Good.
You have to be respectful. Right. Yeah. Even if the person is really trying to rile you up with all these seriously
with
bad
yes, with everything happening. And you're right, we should never ever forget respect. And I guess also when we're talking about these things, another person wouldn't appreciate getting spoken over or having someone else's beliefs shoved down their throats. You're right, there has to be that halfway, and it has to be approached with respect so that it's a conversation after all. It's not a lecture, diba? So next, does anyone else have similar or different experiences regarding talking to strangers or acquaintances about your beliefs? Anyone? Okay. So now I'll move on to friends and classmates. So this is like a level more personal, and because John is laughing, you will go first.
Oh no, I thought Ian wanted to say something because he had muted for like a second.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I'll scratch that kasi hindi siya acquaintance, he's a friend. So,
okay,
yung
well,
nakausap ko.
Friend, let's go.
Yeah, which is a very useful segue into this. Okay. For me, yung naging experience ko, talking to friends, because I have friends who support different candidates, and which is great kasi nakikita ko yung diversity in kind of like what goes on in the minds of different voters. I think what was most important for me was to approach it with really with not with hostility or like with even with shock. It was very important to approach it with openness and kindness, and with this mindset that you're here to understand and to have conversation with them. And the conversation that we had actually was very interesting because it's around this time, this month, a couple years ago, na nag-meet kami.
Oh,
And
wow,
then,
okay.
right? And then, now, a few years later, here we are talking again, although online na. We started the convo because we checked up on each other sa election experience namin. And doon ko nalaman sa conversation na they were actually not set on their candidate. They were very confused, and I think they voted, but the candidates that they weren't really clear on what candidate to choose. So I think I'm not sure if they left it blank. But what we did was we talked about it. We talked about why he felt that way, and then he asked why I am supporting the candidate that I'm supporting, and I explained my side, and then it was great because one thing led to another. He talked about we touched upon his upbringing, why ito yung stance niya sa politics, and then I talked about my upbringing, which led to why this is my stance in politics, and then I helped him kind of realize what kind of process you can take in order to discern what candidate holds the values that you hold. It was great kasi very open siya. I was sending, bigla nga nag-flood kasi we had a GC then. Bigla nag-flood yung GC namin. I was sending like materials and then videos that he could take a look at, documents, ganon. And then he was very open with it. He was like, okay, I'll check this later. I'll check this now. I took a look at this, and then we were talking about all the little things that he was noticing. So yeah, that was my experience. Very, very positive, and I hope that is something that is not particularly constrained just to my friend group. That's really something that I want to see in a lot of our interactions nowadays revolving around politics.
Yeah, and I think the same approach can be used in a lot of things because it would be very productive if we all knew how to listen to one another. And additionally, with what you said, you can read this, you can look this up. I think it's so important that you're able to back up what you say with facts or with references that they can actually read that are verified, of course, so that you know that what you're taking in isn't just hearsay, but something factual. And the fact that you bring up discernment, that's very Atenean. So nice that you brought that up. Okay, next up, Teo.
First off, I want to say Ian's story is like the good timeline. That's like what you want.
Yeah.
That's like the best case scenario, right? It's
It
like,
is.
here are
It
the
really
facts, and
is.
then the other person's just like, okay, let me go check them. Interesting. That's not usually what happens, a lot of the time. But I do think it's a lot easier to talk about differing points of view. From two things. One, you have the advantage of like, well, it's your friends. Usually they have an amount of respect for you that they will listen out. They will listen to what you have to say. So if you have that, then I think appreciate that, respect that. Be grateful for that. I think in my case, at least, if like I hear differing points of view, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be from friends, like even family, might be something you might be touching upon later because like that might be like the next tier or something.
That is the next tier, actually. We're moving inward.
Hard mode. No, it's that thing of like, I kind of understand where you're coming from, right? Like, cause it's like you can't really be mad at them to the highest extent because they also want what's best for the country.
That's right.
No one inherently wants the country to fail.
Of course.
Right? Because that's unless you found someone who does, in which case it's a lot easier now. You don't really, but it's that thing of like when you remember that not these people don't want the country to fail talaga. Or like these people, just want what's best for the country. It's just that the approach that we choose come from differing principles, perspectives, backgrounds, these kinds of things. when you have that in mind, it kind of makes it somewhat, and I'm not gonna say fully easier, but at least, some sort of footing to begin the discussion. But I think there also needs to be a time for for you to make yourself known. You also want what's best for the country. Like,
Yes.
I'm not trying to impose these things on you. This is just what I believe in, and I know that what you believe in is different. We just, let's work something out.
Yeah. Okay, since we're using Ian's example as a best case scenario of someone willing to listen, I think it's also important to clarify. When we say we want to be able to listen to each other, we're not just talking about fact dumping and you have to automatically agree with me. That's not it. Like Teo said, we have to work together to find like a common ground or a way all of this can work, because at the end of the day, we want the same thing. We want to live in a happy, safe country. And we're not going to do that if people just keep receiving things and then just passively following them. It's still not the same as someone actively making a decision to contribute to making the country better. So on that note, Kimmy.
Hi, hello. So, when it comes to talking with friends or family that have different views, of course, the very first emotion would be like, huh? Like, why? It's a lot of like shock and like, I thought we were all on the same page here. As as selfish as we are, we think that people should think like us, or okay, it's gonna work out if everyone was just like me, but that's not how it works. So the first, like, when it comes to friends, right? Syempre, a good friend would have respect for their friends.
Of course.
Like, the way I approached it is with a lot of like empathy and openness, and being very calm, even if in my head or in my heart I'm scared. I'm scared of opening a can of worms that could be a rift between our friendship. It's scary, of course. Why would you want to lose friends? I wouldn't want to lose a friend. And and by being able to establish this kind of like non-hostile like tone and like open tone with my friend, we're able to have a conversation that makes sense even if we don't agree, and just having like very simple like I call them like my response phrases, like, that makes sense, that's fair, I understand where you're coming from. Having that like toolbox of words really does wonders for having a conversation where you have different opinions but want the same thing. That I think that's a key concept we have today. We both want the same things. We all want the same things of having a safe and peaceful and happy country and future. And I was able to learn so much just by not letting my ego get in the way. Kapag alam naman na, like, you know what, maybe I can still have a decent conversation with this person without it ending in like screaming or like, calling them like, oh, you're so pee pee poo poo. It doesn't end like that.
And we shouldn't even get to that.
But like being able to gauge when a conversation is worth having. Like, I think that's like another crucial thing. Sometimes it's really not worth it if this person on the other end of your screen won't listen, or it's really just respect my opinion. Tinanong ko lang naman bakit. Grabe ka. Like maybe it's not really a conversation at that point. So why bother having it? But as much as possible, right? As humanly as possible, we have to talk to people. And parang I learned that we have so much more in common than I thought. We both support the same things. We have the same advocacies, and it's cool because you learn so much. I learned so much from these people.
Yes.
And like at the end of the day, kahit iba yung shade namin sa balota, like I feel a lot of pride pa in them, especially if it's an opinion that, or it's a political view that people aren't willing to like lean into, and yet these people were able to, and I have a lot of respect for that, and I have a lot of admiration. Those are one of the things that I am willing to open my mind to, and like, you know what, maybe in the future, like, who knows, I could feel exactly the same way as them. But for now, like, you know what, we have the same ground points, pero iba naman kasi if it's like they're straight up disinformed, and like their ego gets in the way, because that's not how you're supposed to talk to each other. So ayun, that's a boundary that I would set. And I don't want to speak for everyone, but once again, if it's not a conversation if they don't want to listen and the ego gets in the way, right? So
you want to have conversations, not arguments, because if you all want the same thing, why fight? Like, there are just different ways to get there, but you want the same thing, so it shouldn't turn into an argument. As I said earlier, it should really not get to the name calling. Like, when the respect is lost, that's hard. And then I guess for me personally, when you're talking to friends, you guys are friends. It's not like you met 3 seconds ago. When you're friends, you've gone through something together. You've bonded over things. So it's not that easy to just drop and fight. You guys still kind of want what's best for each other. And you want to be able to see each other and see how you can support each other. So on that note, we'll move one level more personal. Family. So I hear stories of like a kid with parents of different views and vice versa, sometimes even siblings. And those conversations are a little more difficult to have. I've seen stories of kids get bullied by the rest of their family for having a different view, but I've also seen like the other way around. So, Theo, why don't you start this one?
You mentioned me as if I had a lot to say, which I do. No, there really is that, because now you have it's hard mode basically. There's an added layer of the stakes are higher, and I think one thing that like really affects that sort of conversation is that there is a relational thing, but of course it is. I'm trying to find the right words. Like it's sort of it. Yes, it depends on how your relationship is with your family, because it's not the same with every family member. Like you may like your parents, but like your tito, you're not really vibing with them. So it really depends on like that sort of relation. I think where it makes things hard, especially when talking to family members of a generation above you, is the threat of drawing the respect card. Which I think is a sort of like, I feel like it's sort of a cheap shot move, because it doesn't allow for a discussion of sort of like discussion of principles and ideas. It's just more of, well, let's end the conversation because I say so. It's very coercive. It's very imposing. And the people like us, especially like people of my age, who yes, we are students and all that, but we're also adults, and more importantly, we're voters. I think it's only fair that we have that right to at least choose for ourselves.
Yes.
So yeah, it's just there is that so many things in play, especially when the people that you talk to are also like as has been mentioned previously, hostile plus arrogant. Like they really don't want to have a conversation with you. They're just gonna sort of like brush you aside, in which case don't bother. Like really don't bother, and just brush them by the wayside. It's fine. They are products of misinformation and disinformation, and as much as we do want to help get rid of that, part of the problem has to be with like they have to step up and be open to accepting new ideas. But if they're not willing to do that, then there's no point. You're just wasting a lot of energy on that. So yeah, there really is a lot at play. There really is a lot.
It is. And actually, these conversations, they really need openness on both ends, because like we need to take into account that all of us have grown up in different circumstances. Like the things that we are surrounded by being college students now are so different from the circumstances that college students of 20 years ago may have grown up with.
Oh,
and
for
that
sure.
in right and that in itself causes a lot of the differences. But both sides really need to be open enough to have that conversation in order for everyone to get what they want, which is at the end of the day, a peaceful country. And I've heard stories of families like really getting together to make family ballots where everyone chooses their senatorial slates, their presidents together. Very utopian. Like they're like, okay, so you're the younger ones, who would you vote for? Okay, us older ones, we would vote for this one. So how are we going to put them all together, and how are we going to strike a balance? And I think those conversations were very healthy and something we can pick up. I also wanted to say, I want to pick up what Kimmy said earlier, where you can kind of have a toolbox of words you can use for, or phrases for, when you're having conversations like this. That's very helpful also when you have these conversations, so that you're a little more relaxed. Also, you know what you're going to say. Okay, so let's move on to election day. What were the experiences in your precinct? Were you there for hours or were you there for minutes? So we'll start with Kimmy for this one.
Okay, just a real like funny context about this is I actually ended up in the wrong precinct when I registered because at the time they weren't really like they just started imposing that you have to put barangay in your address, or at least like for me. But then, I was like, is that a thing? So I didn't put barangay, and like I was with my mom and she ended up in our our supposed I ended up in like a different barangay, and I was a 2019 Comelec election, Comelec. I was 2019 Senate election.
Senate.
And it was really scary that time because like, oh no, good thing I didn't end up in a different island or something. It was just like like several blocks away. I could walk there. But for our supposed precinct, my family lined up for 4 hours in the heat. It was really, really bad. And I had to stay at home to watch over the house and everything. And they were there 7 a.m. And it was already 10 a.m. and everyone was getting scared for me. I was getting scared. But my tita like fetched me and brought me to that precinct. And I was there for like a wonderful 15 minutes. It was very fast for me. And I am one of the very, very fortunate ones. And I didn't see anything go wrong on my end other than like getting a little lost since it was a big school. But I was in the shade. It was super organized. Kakarating ko lang sa waiting room and papasok na pala ako dun sa mismong place. And I was able to get home at the same time as my family who waited there. And I'm very, very fortunate, but it sucks that everyone's experiences were not the same. And like I checked everything, it's all good. But everything that follows after, oh my god, it's terrible. And I think I've mentioned a while ago that I was seeing my friends and acquaintances talk about how the VCMs are broken. There's no SD card or something. The receipt didn't come out right, and it sucks, to say the least.
It does. And I think our generation especially, we really care about our ballots, and like we really care about being the ones to put it in. We care about the receipt being correct, and we're very, very hands-on with that. But I think everyone deserves someone to have an easy experience with voting, because it's your right as a citizen. It's not supposed to be another struggle. It's something that should be easy for everyone to do, also so that everyone is encouraged to do it. So, next experience, who wants to share? John.
I can go, because my precinct was the only one that had a broken PCM, so I had to wait for half a day.
Wow.
I had to go through quite a lot of negotiation. I had to talk to the PPCRB volunteers. We had to ask for like the Comelec people in the precinct, but they wouldn't, come out to meet us. It took a while for us to talk to them. I'm very chatty by nature, so I kind of got to a point where I was riling up the people in my precinct to like try and put pressure on Comelec to face us in the line and tell us like what's wrong with our VCM. So we started lining up at around 6:30 people in my precinct, and the VCM broke down for my precinct like immediately. when the precinct opened. So it took until like 2-3 p.m. for the machine to be repaired and all that, while just standing there and waiting for VCM to get repaired. So I would say it's, a good half a day before the VCM was repaired and we were able to vote. But my main problem isn't so much with, my precinct's broken VCM, so much as it is the many other broken VCMs, especially in places and precincts where you have a lot of people who need to go to work.
Yeah,
that was a serious problem for them, because a lot of people lined up and were not able to vote because they had more pressing and more immediate needs. Like they need to earn money for the day, even if you said it was a holiday, right? They still needed money. They still needed to go to work. So I think effectively, a lot of people were disenfranchised by really what I would say is kind of a broken implementation of the election for 2022. So there's that big problem. And as much as it is an inconvenience for us, it's far more of an inconvenience for other people, because not only was it like standing in the heat the whole day, it also means losing your vote for 6 years. You won't be able to vote for a president for the next 6 years. You won't be able to vote for national candidates for the next 3 years. So there's that. I think there is a responsibility for us now to ask Comelec, what just happened here? What's wrong with the VCMs? What's wrong with the whole implementation of the elections for 2022? I think there are a lot of problems in terms of implementation. I wouldn't say so much with the results, but with the inconvenience that effectively sort of took away the right of people to vote. As far as I'm concerned, I think the 1,800 VCMs that broke down affected at least 1 million voters.
Yes.
So that's at least 1 million people. Let's say, at the very least, people who had to wait. And let's say half of the people who had to wait either just gave up and went home or went to work, or gave their ballots out of force, out of like a pressing need to like, I need to get out of here to go to work. We'll just give our ballots over to like the precinct officers, even though they didn't want to, which I think to me is still kind of wrong. They didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And they had no other alternative, even though they felt like they were throwing their vote away. They just felt like, I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. I'll just give my ballot over. And I think even that should count as some sort of disenfranchisement. I mean, it's sort of stretching the term, right? But it's something they didn't want to do, and they did not trust precinct officers. I remember distinctly hearing people from my precinct line who were waiting for like the VCMs to be repaired. A bunch of PPCRB volunteers came over to us and said, like, you have the option to just give your ballot to us, and then we'll batch feed them when the VCMs repair it. And I distinctly remember a lot of people in my line saying, mahirap ng magtiwala. It's hard to trust, especially when it comes to like the election process in the Philippines. So if you were in kind of their shoes, you didn't want to trust precinct officers, but you felt like you had no other choice. You had to gamble on your distrust. You had to gamble on giving your ballot over to people who you didn't think were credible. Right? Then I think that's problematic in itself. Of course, the case is much worse for people who were not able to vote, or for people who had to wait for the next day. Like, say, for example, people from that one precinct in QC who had to sleep over in their own precinct.
Yes.
So, I think at the end of the day, while I was inconvenienced and had to wait half a day to cast my vote, I did get to cast my vote. But a lot of people were not able to. And I think that's a bigger problem than what I did.
That is because like one point also is to encourage people to cast their votes. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what they want. But when you see a system like this, you can't control how people think anymore. And I really don't know the reasons why there were so many machines broken, but that's really something to look into because it affects so many people and in so many different ways. It's a systematic thing. Voters are inconvenienced, and they need to take into account that like even if the day was given like off work, it was a holiday, there were some people I saw who said, oh, I had to travel to the province to vote because that's where I'm registered, and then I need to take my travel time into account. I don't live here. I have to go back to Manila to like work or go to school. So they weren't expecting to be in the precinct for hours. They thought like, okay, I have enough time in the morning to go, and then I'll have time to go home after. So like that was also a factor that played into it. So hopefully that's looked into, and next time people are more prepared for that. So next up, Maria. I think you touched a bit on this a while ago.
Yeah, I have same sentiments as
Yeah.
one. No, for me, it took a few hours also. For my
Mhm.
friend, also took a few hours. But ultimately, there were people who were not able to vote. A lot of people, not just out of like their own choice, like they just didn't want to vote or anything. There are a lot of people who wanted to vote. I've heard a lot of things about how this election year there were so many more voters than previous years.
Yeah, it was one
Yeah,
of the highest turnouts.
yeah. And so that means people want to vote. People want to come
Yes,
out
yeah.
and vote for something or
Mhm.
someone. And a lot of people did have that option, regardless of their candidate, voters of all colors were affected by all the lack of preparation by Comelec,
Yes.
all of the problems that happened on election day, such as people who had to work, people who had to take into account other things like travel time, like you said, and it is very it brings a lot of emotions. It's very confusing. Why does this happen?
Yes, yes.
It makes you mad. Why is this happening? Makes you sad. Like, why is this happening?
Yeah.
It's all just like, why is this happening in so many different
Exactly.
ways? It's but yeah, but still, why is it happening? But still, it is happening. So we can't really. I don't think it would do much to dwell on like all the emotions that we're feeling right now. I mean, it wouldn't do much to like shut down or whatever. It just means that there's a lot of things we still have to do, a lot of things
Yeah.
we have to fight for and
Mhm.
to hold people accountable for. Yeah.
Yes. That's right. And last night I had a realization of how young our administration is. There are countries that have like had hundreds of years, hundreds of rounds of presidents, or close to 100 rounds of presidents. And we're at 17, and I was actually very surprised that wow, we're at 17. Our governance is very, very young. So if you think about it, we're still in our growing pains stage. And that doesn't justify anything that's happening now, but it explains like, okay, we're in our growing pains phase. So what are we going to do about it? We can't just be in our growing pains phase forever, but we need to learn from this, and we need to see how we can get out of this for future generations, because it will matter 50 years down the line. Okay, so unfortunately, we are over time, but there are still a few more points to cover, and that is after the election day. So you still don't need to reveal your candidates to me if you don't want to, but please tell me how do you feel now, and what are the things that you want to do moving forward? And on the trivia side, actually, I'm just curious, did your campaigns have plans for what to do with the campaign materials after the elections? So I guess this would cover like posters or maybe campaign merch that wasn't distributed during the campaigns. So anyone can start for this one. Um, John, maybe you have
Sure, the
something to
plan
say.
was to upcycle them, like
Oh,
gather the
okay.
sort of posted materials for my candidate,
Yeah.
slate, whatever we could get, recover them, put them through the upcycling process.
Oh, okay.
Basically, turn them into manufactured goods
Yeah.
down the line. Yeah, so it's very eco-friendly sort of. My campaign had
Yes,
sort of a
very.
very green edge to it, so I suppose that's something that they should be doing, and something we're doing now, right?
That's good. That's good. It should actually be a plan, actually. Like, okay, when you campaign, there should be like an aftermath plan. Like, what do we do with our extra shirts, with our posters? We can't exactly leave them on the walls, and we should absolutely not leave them on the street. So it would be nice to have plans like that. So Maria, maybe for your campaign.
Okay, so actually we're from the same campaign.
Oh, okay. Okay. Campaign review.
Sorry, it's the same.
It's fine. It's fine.
But regarding post-elections, like I've been saying previously, there's still a lot of work to be done. Our political activity did not begin with the elections. It won't end with the elections.
Yeah.
We're still talking about how do or we're going to do more like educational discussions. We're going to do more statements, more content, we need to talk to more people. We need to talk to more young people.
Yes, that's right. And there is also that next generation of voters who will be applying for their voters IDs in 3 years. In 3 years, right? So that's like something to look forward to as well. So Ian, you're next. Thoughts moving forward.
Okay, so I've been in rallies, but I've never been in the facilitative side. So I'm not quite sure about what my camp's plans are. Pero actually, this is interesting because there was a suggestion that came up in my head when thinking about that. Is that it would be interesting to kind of leave a few things to be archived for future use.
Yeah.
Kind of like an example or a beacon that these are things that have happened in the past.
Yes.
Kind of like both digitally and physically. That would be nice. Keeping some memorable, not just memorabilia. It's more what do you call it? An archive of memories. Now we can
It's a
show
bit
to
like a
future
time
generations.
capsule.
Yeah, time capsule.
Like a time
Okay,
capsule, a bit of a souvenir from the time.
And also perhaps a proof na this all
Yeah.
happened.
Exactly.
Kind of like protecting our history, in a sense.
Yeah. Everyone's, I think, publication materials and even merchandise can be considered like documentation of things that happened at this time. So Maria, you're raising your hand again?
Yeah, just very quickly wanted to share. I'm a history major and that's exactly what I did. I kept all the primary sources. They're all in a box.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. We need our primary sources protected. We really do. So Kimmy, you're up next.
Campaign reveal, also the same about upcycling. And especially since like I did mention that we ran a shop where we sold campaign materials and merchandise for some leftovers since they're like wearables. I am keeping them because free pambahay. I mean, yeah, it's pambahay, but also it is for archival purposes. It's important to remember that this happened. Well, every election is important. And to remember this one, especially in our current context, I think that presses the sense of urgency that we need and the sense of like importance that we have to remember that this happened.
Yeah.
And ayun, also recycling, turning tarpaulins into bags or pouches, something like that. Although I don't really know how that works, but I'm very happy for that. And now we must wait and process together everything that's going on and everything that will happen. And we're holding on to bated breath right now.
We are.
Yeah, whatever happens, wouldn't want to impose, but this is kind of this is not the easiest thing to watch.
It's not. That's right. So Teo, you're next.
First off, on the campaign materials questions, that's a great idea. I'm gonna go get the tarps like in front of our house and just keep it. Because it is it is nice to preserve those parts of our history. Especially this, which is a very historic election, I think, in our country's history. Granted, it is in its growing pains phase, but it can't be for long. I think this is more on the sort of like based on what has happened the past couple of days with regards to the elections. I think my thoughts on it are just moving forward, I feel like the issues that have been brought up, and there have been so many with how these things have been conducted, ballots being waived, people having to wait hours upon hours into the night just to be able to exercise their right as a citizen, you know, for that, you know, sort of my only the only word coming to my mind are sorry, it's a lax attitude because they had 3 years. They had 3 years to take care of it. So, you know, and they should like moving forward, they should address these issues as soon as possible so that, you know, next time no one has to wait. No one should be waiting, sleeping in the precincts just to shade ovals. That should be a short amount of time in the precinct, and then that's it. It's, you know, it's what you want, like what you want for the country. It shouldn't take that long, and yet it did. And I don't think anyone deserves that. So yeah.
That's right. It's not something that should be saved for the last minute. It's something that should be prepared so that citizens wouldn't need to go through what they went through again this year. Okay, so before we say goodbye for real, what are some words you want to impart with the audience? So we'll start with Maria, and then John, then Teo, then Kimmy, then Ian.
Well, even after the elections, I'm really looking forward to talking to more Ateneans actually about politics, because we have this idea that Ateneans are apathetic and they're rich snobs or whatever. But you know,
not in the recent years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, and as a history major, I'm very aware of how Ateneo has this history and legacy of very staunch student activism. And sometimes you're wondering, where did that go? But you know, it's still there. It's still there. We can still fan the flames a little bit more to make it bigger. So I'm looking forward to that now that it's after the elections.
Yes, that's right. A lot to look forward to. And I guess from there also, Ateneans have really started going down from the hill, just like the school wanted us to all of those years ago. And it's good to see a start, especially now. So John, you're up next.
Just to add to Maria's point, I think it's best for us to sort of go back to our own experiences, at least for a lot of us, that we were most effective in terms of our engagement with politics when we did it with other people. When, you know, to use a more political term, when we're organized for it, right? When you have an agenda, you talk about with a group, when you act with a group, when you move with a group. So I think moving forward after the elections, I think what's most important is to get organized. That means joining an organization, joining a political movement. I suppose that's quite sharp for a lot of people, a bit edgy, right? Do we really have to join? But that's where you find political community. If you don't join one and you stand on your own 2 feet, you end up like a lot of other people who tried to go into politics and eventually lost their reform credentials because they couldn't stand the pressures of like sort of the culture inside these institutions. So to hold fast, right, and to keep fighting, you need a group with you. So get organized, join an org. That's how you fight. If you don't fight with other people, you don't join with other people, you won't win anything in politics. There's no politics without 2 people involved in it. So join an org.
Nice. Next, Teo.
I want to add on to those points because like I did last year, I did like a podcast report on Atenean privilege, and you know, had a conversation with former Sanggu president Haya Bendania, and it was like one of the favorite things I've done like during my time as a reporter. And you know, a very insightful thing is that Ateneans are very talaga. They do get involved, but there is still that, you know, that level of privilege. I think what's really nice to see is that despite that, they still choose to go down from the hill. Granted, it's not everyone, but I feel like we just need to push those people to really go beyond the perimeter of Ateneo and to go outside, you know, as they do say, touch grass, you know, touch grass, you know, with other people. It's because when you have that sort of mindset. I think I'm gonna be open about this and say that like during the 2016 elections, I wasn't allowed to vote, but I was really a Duterte supporter. And before that, I was also like a Marcos supporter. So I understand like, people who support Marcos, people who support Duterte. I'm kind of grateful that this I'm not there anymore. But like, I understand the sort of what they're thinking and like where their problems come from. And like, yeah, I get it. So yun, it does pay to not just have to not just learn about the Filipino situation. It pays to be in it, not just have lectures, but really get involved and be there. Yeah.
Immerse. So next, Kimmy.
Well, I resonate with many thoughts that have been shared. It doesn't end with our electoral politics. It's not just like one day, okay, today is May 9th, time to finally participate in politics. That one day I will do it. It doesn't work like that. Every day we are participating in it, and we need to be stronger, and we need to hold steadfast to like what we believe in. And I hope that what we believe in ideally is right or for the best all the time. And nga, we need numbers, we need to organize and mobilize. And we've seen I will have to rebrand it, but very obvious what I'm talking about. But the power of the people just coming together, there is strength in numbers. Talagang ayun nga, I don't know, this one's so funny to me, but remembering what Pinoy would say back then, na kayo ang boss ko. Talagang kami naman yung boss mo. That's what a leader is. You serve the people.
Yeah.
And parang when we know that something is going wrong, when we know that this is like what we're witnessing is not right, especially with seeing people more involved pala, by the way, and like during the pandemic when so many things were happening, things that were terrible. It's so nice to see like everyone, like especially the youth, our peers, granted that like many of us are so privileged that we could have just chosen like not to. Like I don't care. I'm going to play Valorant now. And like all the more we need to come together and realize that, you know what, it's worth standing up for what we deserve. So ayun, just keep going at it, even if it's scary. But then I believe that like it really is like the scariest parts that like we need to tackle the most. And it always starts with that person who's brave enough to take on those scary parts. Because if we keep saying that, let other people do it, what if we run out of other people to do it?
That's right.
Magmamigrate ka na lang. Wala na may iwan sa Pilipinas. Well, that's another privilege thing, right? Lipat ka na ng Australia, and then okay, well, no more Filipinos. So check your privilege. And if you have the privilege, all the more you should be going down from the hill, even if it's hard, even if it's scary.
Yeah. It'll always be hard. I think that's something that we have to remember. It's always gonna be hard, but something we have to do. Ian, last but not least.
Okay, final thoughts. First off, I want to talk about feelings. Worried, concerned, excited, anxious. But all in all, kind of like tied to this this concept na now more than ever, I've been able to engage with this and experience this feeling of the sublime. Na there's this awe-inspiring or terrifying experience or realization of things that are bigger than yourself. And because of this experience of the sublime, I've often to look at the silver linings of our situation. Na the primary one is that the fact that there are a lot of things to learn from both our micro and macro victories and losses. Some of the silver linings include, that despite the existence of many repeated problems or failures, there's also a host of a new wave. Wow, a new wave of first experiences. Yeah. Kasi diba, there are a lot of people, like you guys said, there are a lot of people coming out now. There are a lot of people coming out to vote, to actually participate. And alongside that, that even with the fact that there are people who forget, unfortunately, our history, there are also now many who realize that we are history in the making, that history should be something not just built, but protected. And these new voices that I'm honored to be contemporaries with, including you guys, are all participating and contributing to this collective experience that may allow us to make better choices in the future. Kasi diba, that's what democracy is all about. It's all about the cycle of doing better and better with each passing cycle of elections, electoral cycles. And it may or may not seem like it right now, pero my final thought talaga is I believe na we can do it. All we need to do is keep learning and keep improving. Yeah.
That's right. So, well said, everyone. I guess to close this off, something that one of our hosts in Radio Katipunan, so hi Pat from MindEd, he said, we have our role as Filipinos and we practice that every day. We practice that through voting, for believing in what we believe in. But we also have a role as students, as siblings, as children, some as parents, as friends. And these are roles that shouldn't be neglected because they all contribute to the bigger picture. They all contribute to us being Filipino, and they all contribute to us shaping the future we want. So these other roles shouldn't be neglected. Our yearning and action for what we want will continue as long as we continue it. So the Athenians, like I said earlier, we have been going down from the hill, but this is just the start. We can continue this. We can go a little lower. As Teo said, we can touch some more grass. So don't be afraid to do that. Now, if I can quote a recent article from the Boston Globe about Dr. Kama Inis, to say a person doesn't have a bias is to say that a person isn't human. It's how we navigate the world based on what we're taught and our own personal histories. Now, why is this relevant? The first step is accepting that all of us are different. All of us have different backgrounds. And because of this, all of us have formed and shaped very different opinions. But this does not mean that we can't work together. The more we should talk to each other, have conversations and discussions instead of arguing. And only then are we all going to achieve our common goal, which is the good of our country. Because at the end of the day, we all want the same thing. There may be different ways to get there, but we can all work together to get there. So on that note, this has been New Wave. Thank you to Sir Justin B. and all other team members who have been working tirelessly on the station's election specials. This includes my co-producers Migoy Arroyo and Ian Bondok. To our audience, thank you once again for joining us today. I would just like to say hello to Erwin Isaac Vega Villamor, L'Oreal Eleazar, and Ton Escritor. Thank you for taking the time to join us on this stream and to comment. So see you again next week. Don't miss out. Also, follow us on Instagram at newwave.rk to stay updated. Catch the replay on Radio Katipunan 87.9 FM's Facebook page, YouTube, and Twitter Live, all of which go by at Radio Katipunan. But most of all, thank you to our guests for joining us this afternoon. I learned a lot from all of you, and I hope to see you all in the future, continuing fighting for what all of you are fighting for right now. So thank you very much for spending time with us here today. So once again, I'm Max. Good luck with your ACADS, everyone. This has been New Wave. We'll see you all next week.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
If it's entertainment you crave,
catch us on
New Wave, surfing through the latest on our shores.
Every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m.
See you there.
Radyo Katipunan. News, insights, inspiration. Radyo Katipunan. Down from the hill and down to the world. Radyo Katipunan. The voice of the Blue Eagle.